Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Yashoda Nandana Jai Braj Janaranjana Jaya Yashoda Nandana Jai Braj Janaranjana Jaya Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Jai Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radhe Jai Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radhe Jai Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jai Jaya Prabhupada Jai Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jai Jaya Prabhupada Shri Radha Madhav ki jai, Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Dashottaradhikaryatra. So today we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 11, Text 41. Dashottaradhikaryatra pravishta paramanuvat pravishta paramanuvat lak lakshyate antargataschanye lakshyate antargataschanye Kotisho Hyandarashaya Kotisho Hyandarashaya Dashottaradhikaryatra Pravishta Paramanuvat Pravishta Paramanuvat Lakshyate Antargataschanye Lakshyate Antargataschanye Kotisho Hyandarashaya Dasha Uttara Adikai with 10 times greater thickness. Yatra in which Pravishtha entered Parama Anuvat like atoms. Lakshyate it, the mass of universes, appears. Antagata, come together. Cha and anye in the other Kotisha clustered. He for Andarashaya, huge combination of universes. Translation purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The layers of elements covering the universes are each 10 times thicker than the one before, and all the universes clustered together appear like atoms in a huge combination. Once again, the layers or elements covering the universes are each 10 times thicker than the one before, and all the universes clustered together appear like atoms in a huge combination. The coverings of the universes are also constituted of the elements of earth, water, fire, air, and ether, and each is 10 times thicker than the one before. The first covering of the universe is earth, and it is 10 times thicker than the universe itself. If the universe is 4 billion miles in size, which is what we read in the previous verse, then the size of the earthly covering of the universe is 4 billion times 10, 40 billion miles. The covering of water is 10 times greater than the earthly covering, 400 billion miles. The covering of fire is 10 times greater than the watery covering, 4 trillion miles. The covering of air is 10 times greater than that of fire, 40 trillion miles. The covering of ether is 10 times greater still than that of air, 400 trillion miles, and so on. The universe within the coverings of matter appears to be like an atom in comparison to the coverings, and the number of universes is unknown even to those who can estimate the coverings of the universes. Om Jnanam Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadahmayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitangsha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanustute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. The layers or elements covering the universes are each 10 times thicker than the one before, and all the universes clustered together appear like atoms in a huge combination. This is a very amazing, wonderful verse, and it's actually a very nice verse for New Year's Day. It's a nice verse for meditation at the beginning of the year, because this verse actually reveals our smallness, reveals how little we are, how insignificant we are, and how insignificant our lives are in comparison to the Lord and the greater scheme of things. Like um, the last few days, Maharaj has been speaking on the importance of the Bhagavatam science and we were sort of discussing, well, what is the relevance of the Srimad Bhagavatam science? And this is one of the relevances to our lives, that it puts things in perspective. It tells us just how minute we are in comparison to the nature of Krishna, who Krishna is. We're so minute that sometimes it's almost hard to figure out, how is it that we're significant? Like it's almost sometimes a little um, discouraging to realize that we're so little in this. Because, we tend to think everything about us is, important, and Bhagavatam is telling us how little we are. So Prabhupada, in the last sentence, he says, the universe within the coverings of matter appears to be like an atom. The universe, the entire universe, with all these coverings, appears to be like an atom in comparison to the coverings. And the number of universes is unknown even to those who can estimate the coverings of the universes. So modern science, modern astronomy estimates that there's about 100 billion galaxies, each containing 100 billion stars. Right? 100 billion galaxies, each containing 100 billion stars. Now, I can assure you that there's no scientist that actually went and counted those 100 billion galaxies and counted the 100 billion stars in those 100 billion galaxies. Right? The scientists, they come up with these far out numbers. And this, I read this in a science textbook. It's a bona fide source. And they come up with these far out numbers so they can look really smart. But the fact is that as far as they know, there could be 200 billion galaxies, each containing, 300 billion stars. That number that they throw out there, 100 billion galaxies, each containing 100 billion stars, is just an estimation. I mean, all they're basically saying is that the universe is unlimited and we just don't know, how many galaxies there are and how many stars there are. There's no, textbook of astronomy that has, described each one of these 100 billion galaxies and, or given a good reason why there's 100 billion galaxies, not 150 billion galaxies, simply because we can hardly see to the end of our galaxy. Right? So how can we be sure that there's 100 billion galaxies beyond it? It just, they have some way of estimating, and they put it together, and some other scientists liked that number, and then they said, yeah, that sounds like a good number. And then someone managed to get a paper published, and he quoted someone else saying that, and so therefore it's a solid reference. And that person, quoted someone else saying that, and so, like, they just kind of develop that number, and it becomes that standardized number in science. But there's no actual evidence for it. It's just an estimation. And they're saying that the universe is unlimited. And imagine what the Srimad Bhagavatam is telling us is that 100 billion galaxies is just one universe. And then there are billions and trillions of these universes. And then each one of these universes, our universe, is 4 billion miles in size. And then each one has a covering that is so thick that is 10 times the size of the universe, just the first covering, and then 10 times the size after that. And this is why no matter what we want to do, we can't get out of this universe by our own strength. It's just like, you can explode, millions of atomic bombs, and you won't get through even half a, mile of Earth, right? Or maybe 100 miles of Earth. But here we're talking about four times 10 billion miles, 40 billion miles of the covering of this first earthly covering. And then after that, water is 40 billion miles. Then fire is 400 billion miles. Then air is 4 trillion miles. Then ether is 40 trillion miles. etc. And I think I skipped once because it was 400 trillion that we came to. So then this last sentence of the verse, it tells us that therefore the universe itself, that is 4 billion miles, that is 100 billion galaxies, each containing 100 billion stars, looks like an atom in comparison to the coverings. And that actually makes sense because it's 4 billion miles, but in relation to 400 trillion miles, which is just one covering, plus 40 trillion, plus all that, that 4 billion is an atom in comparison to that. So just, I mean, there's just, I mean, no, basically we should just say Krishna is unlimited, right? Because there's no limit just to this one universe. And then this entire universe with its coverings is one of, of an unknown number of universes. So how great Krishna is, how unlimited he is. And I was thinking what this can inspire us to feel is not our unworthiness or our, just you could say unimportantness, but rather that nothing in this material world is very important. And that's why if the source of all these universes is Krishna, if the source of all of this is Krishna, then the only thing that's important is Krishna, right? So it's not that everything else we don't have to encounter or live with or address, but what we can practically apply here is that yes, those problems exist, those life activities and stages exist, but nothing is important other than Krishna. And that's why we shouldn't get disturbed by anything or too excited about anything other than Krishna. And this is why the Gita says that one who's steady in happiness and distress, fame and infamy, honor and dishonor, such a person is in knowledge. Such a person is very dear to me, because such a person is actually seeing things as they are. If we have, the bird's eye view of this universe, then we'll realize how unimportant everything is, materially, everything material is. So, spiritual life or this Krishna consciousness is actually the process of identifying what is important. And what's important is Krishna. What's important is Krishna's devotees. What's important is our service to Krishna. What's important is our relationship with Krishna's, universe. But it's all important because of its connection with Krishna. Otherwise, it's not important because nothing else really matters. And I keep mentioning how we're so insignificant. This should this should this should convince us that we are so insignificant. At the same time, because Krishna is so important, um, we can also take refuge in the fact that because we're part of Him, we are also, to some degree, important in that relationship. For Krishna, we're very important, and our relationship with Krishna is such that no one else can replace that relationship that we have with Krishna. No one else can replace the service that we have for Krishna. And that's why it's very important. That's why it's very important. But it's only in relationship with Krishna that it's important. Everything else is not important. Everything else is unimportant. And ignorance is when we make it very important in our lives. And this is why Queen Kunti, in her prayers, and she mentioned this verse, and this is why I posted that verse in the group also, because I was preparing a little bit mentally for this class this morning, and this verse came. Uh, 42. Very famous verse of Queen Kunti. We're having the good fortune of hearing Queen Kunti's prayers from Maharaj, and um, this is one of the most celebrated verses of her prayers. She says, Tvayi me nanya vishaya matir madhupate sakrit rati mudvahata dadha gange vogham mudanvati. O Lord of Madhu, as the Ganges forever flows to the sea without hindrance, let my attraction be constantly drawn unto you without being diverted to anyone else. O Lord of Madhu, as the Ganges forever flows to the sea without hindrance, let my attraction be constantly drawn unto you without being diverted to anyone else. Perfection of pure devotional service is attained when all attention is diverted towards the transcendental loving service of the Lord. To cut off the tie of all other affections does not mean complete negation of the finer elements, like affection for someone else. This is not possible. A living being, whoever he may be, must have this feeling of affection for others, because this is a symptom of life. The symptom of life, such as desire, anger, hankerings, feelings of attraction, etc., cannot be annihilated. Only the objective has to be changed. Desire cannot be negated, but in devotional service, the desire is changed only for the service of the Lord, in place of desire for sense gratification. The so-called affection for family, society, country, etc., consists of different phases of sense gratification. When this desire is changed for the satisfaction of the Lord, it is called devotional service. So Srila Prabhupada in the purport is making this same point here so beautifully. He says that perfection of devotional service is when all of our attention is directed towards Krishna's and Krishna's loving service. At the same time, in the next sentence, he says that we cannot negate the finer elements like affection for someone else. So how is that possible? Well, the same point, he says this is a symptom of life. It's possible because this is the point that we have these feelings and we have these connections. And to be a human being, we must have them. But what's important is our relationship, our devotion to Krishna. And everything is important in relationship to that. Because everything else is very minute, very insignificant, very temporary. Right? And that's the difference of, you could say, approach. Like the devotee also has a family. The devotee has even more affection for his family than a materialist has, because the devotee is not selfish. Materialists, they have a family, but they're still only thinking of themselves. A devotee can actually be very very loving towards their family. But if something goes wrong, they're not overwhelmed by it. If something goes wrong, they're not devastated by it. Because what's important is Krishna. Just like the Pandavas, right? Abhimanyu died, their other 5 sons died, their relatives died, but they're okay. They were still absorbed in their service to Krishna. Because their central connection, Prabhupada says, their number one relationship is with Krishna. But then when Krishna leaves, right? Arjuna goes to Dwarka and he sees everyone has left, Krishna has left. When Krishna leaves, then they say, okay, now it's our time to retire and focus fully on Krishna and leave. When Krishna left, then they could not bear that, because their first relationship is with Krishna. Every soul's first relationship is with Krishna. This is in the Bhagavatam, the story of Vaidharvi and Puranjana, who comes into, reincarnates as Vaidharvi in his next life. And she loses her husband Malayadhvaja, and then she is crying and she wants to enter into the fire. And then Krishna comes in the form of a Brahmana. And Krishna's name in that form of a Brahmana is Avigyata Sakha, which means the unknown friend. Avigyata means unknown, Sakha, friend. And he forbids her from entering into the fire. And he tells her that I and you have been together for millions of years as two friends, as two swans living in the Manasa lake. And you and I have had an eternal connection. And that those verses specifically say that we used to frolic together, we used to play together. But you, desiring carnal pleasures, you left me and you came to this material world. But I came with you as your unknown friend. But it says you left me and you came to this material world. So our original relationship is with Krishna. That's why you see why children are, especially at a young age, they're very attached to their parents. Why? Because it's the original relationship. In their existence in this world, they don't recall a relationship before their parents because there was, in their existence in that body, that's the first relationship. And that's why it's in many ways the most grounding one, the most important one for anyone in this world. All of, person's mental balance and mental development starts with their relationship with their parents. And if they don't have that, if that's traumatized, they're traumatized almost for their whole life, unless, they're able to somehow recover from it. But you see children, youth, people call it students, their intelligence is also dependent on the affection that they get from their parents. There's studies that show that. So it's such an important relationship because it's the original relationship. It's the first relationship a person has in this material body. But the first relationship that we ever have since time immemorial is with Krishna. And that's why the only relationship that can replace all other relationships, or you could say mend or replace them if we don't have them, is our relationship with Krishna. And this is why in one bhajan, I think it's Narottam Das Thakur, or maybe it's Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he says how Krishna's love is equal to the love of millions of mothers, of millions of fathers. Krishna's affection and that connection is equivalent to that, because that is the first relationship and the most important relationship that every soul has in this world. So science can help us appreciate the wonder of Krishna. And Krishna, after describing all this, all of his majestic power, he tells Arjuna in the Gita that what is the use of telling all of this? Even all of these millions of universes and all of these descriptions that we're reading, he says, with just a spark of my splendor, I pervade this entire universe. I'm forgetting the Sanskrit for this, but it's a verse in the Gita. He says, oh, Arjuna, what use is all of this? He shows the universal form, he shows all of his material thing, and he says, with just a spark of my splendor, I pervade all these worlds. How wonderful is Krishna, right? And all of this material creation is still just on the other side of the Viraja river. On the other side is the spiritual creations and the spiritual worlds. And in those spiritual worlds, there's at least 3 times as many universes as this world. So Prabhupada in one lecture says, not even 1/4 is the material world. He says 10%. He says even a few percent. He says, just like in a city, what percentage of the city is a prison house? It's not even 1% in most cities. It's like, 3 or 4 big buildings. And there's so many buildings in Chicago, for example. That's what the material world is in relationship to the spiritual world. So he says, this material world is actually very small in relation to the spiritual world. And this world is so amazing, what to speak of than other worlds. And so just by studying this world, we can appreciate how the Lord is. And if we see the great scientists in history, For example, Isaac Newton. They made this point, and they made it very well, that the reason why they studied their science, according to Isaac Newton, he said, because Newton in his life was primarily interested in spirituality. He didn't have much interest in science, actually. All the science that he did in a span of 5 years in his life as an undergraduate student in Cambridge University. And when he graduated, then his professor gave up his chair and he gave it to Newton, and Newton held the chair in physics at Cambridge University. And during those 5 years, he wrote his book on calculus, on math, which is called Principia Mathematica. He did his work on physics, optics, thermodynamics. Virtually in every field of science, Newton is, one of the founding figures. He was voted the greatest scientist in the history of mankind. He was very a brilliant person. He made the first, working model of the solar system. He contributed to every. He laid the foundation of every field of science that we have now. And in the introduction to his Principia Mathematica, Newton writes that nothing would please me more than if by reading this book on math, faith in God would be strengthened. He said, nothing would please me more than if by reading this book, the Principia Mathematica, which is known as the most influential book in the history of science, because all the foundations of math are laid down there. He said, nothing would please me more than if by reading this book, faith in God would be strengthened. And Newton thought that if people actually appreciate the fact that this nature is so regulated and so beautiful, and there's actually a system, there's actually an intelligence behind it, and there's actually laws, then from that, people will infer that there's a lawmaker. If there's an intelligence behind in this world, then there's someone intelligent who's actually made this world. So he and others of his time, they actually did their science as a way to establish, to encourage people's faith in God. And this is why, this is why, uh, this is why what they did at that time was called natural theology. Is actually, at that time, the word science was not there. It was considered a form of theology because they were studying the nature to understand the mind of God, to appreciate the mind of God, and to encourage faith in God, strengthen people's faith in God by trying to establish the Lord's greatness by studying nature. So by studying nature and understanding appreciating these narrations in the Bhagavatam, we can appreciate the mind of Krishna, the capacity of Krishna. And when we're fully convinced about him, then we can fully depend on him. Then we can fully surrender ourselves to him. Because as long as we have some other thing in life, like we're not fully convinced about who Krishna is, our mind will get diverted in other places. As long as our appreciation of how wonderful Krishna is not there, our mind gets diverted because we think that I need something else other than Krishna. I need something else. And that's Maharaj was mentioning in that class, that how therefore devotional service with dependence, complete dependence on the Lord, is better than just devotional service, because that's when we have no other object of refuge or shelter other than Krishna, and we understand that we're fully safe in His hands. That's one of the 6 principles of surrender, that the Lord is my only protector. And I was thinking that the 10th offense against the holy name is mixed with the 11th offense. So the 10th offense against the holy name is to not have complete faith in the chanting of the holy names and to maintain material attachments even after understanding so many instructions on this matter. And then it says, it is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Now, so many devotees, Maharaj and others have said that how this offense, to be inattentive while chanting, is the root of all the other offenses. So I was wondering before that if it's such an important offense, then why doesn't it get its own stature as an offense? Like, why is it combined with number 10? Is it just because 10 is an even number? Like, why isn't it like number 11? Or why isn't it number 2 or number 1? If it's the root of all other offenses, why does it just get tacked on there? And that's actually because just thinking, reflecting on it, it may be because the 10th offense, to not have complete faith in the chanting of the holy names, even after understanding so many instructions on this matter, is in some ways the same as being inattentive while chanting. Because if we have complete faith in the holy name, that the holy name is capable of solving all my problems, the holy name is a source of all happiness, the holy name can give me unlimited happiness, the holy name can fully satisfy my soul, then we won't be inattentive while we chant. Then how can we be inattentive when we chant? We are only inattentive when we don't have that faith and when our mind is diverted elsewhere, when we have other desires and other aspirations because we're not convinced that the holy name gives us everything. And this is why we start this year with that holy name, because that conviction that the holy name gives me everything is the most important conviction for us to have. And this verse here of Queen Kunti is saying that same 10th offense, but as a positive, not as an offense, but rather as a request for doing something, as an affirmation. This verse I was thinking is actually the chanter's verse. It's the japa's verse, because this is what we are praying to Krishna when we chant. Today we have our japathons, or we have so many rounds to chant, and this is what we're praying, is that we're aspiring for also, is how can I chant without getting distracted, without my mind going elsewhere? How can I chant purely and without distraction? And this is what Queen Kunti is exactly asking the Lord, that let my mind flow towards you without any hindrance. Let my attraction be drawn unto you without being diverted to anyone else. What that means is this, like we're chanting, right? We want to chant and only think of Krishna and not anyone else. So she's actually praying for what we are trying for. And she's giving us a solution also. That the solution is that we are that our mind should not be diverted. It should be only attracted to Krishna. We should have that faith and that intense desire. And her metaphor of the Ganges is very significant, because when the Ganges, it flows towards down the Himalayas, from Gangotri down the Himalayas towards the sea. It flows with such a force. Maybe some of you who have gone up there in the mountains, you've seen it, but no one bathes in the Ganges up there. You can't take a bath there, because the force of the water is so strong that if even you put your foot in there, you get swept down. And there's no power in the world that can save you other than the Lord, right? No, physically, no one can save you. The water rushes down so fast that if you threw a car in there, you wouldn't notice it. It's so vast. So she's asking that let my attraction be like that. That is just nothing else other than Krishna. And that's the perfection of life, when we're fully convinced. And we cannot be convinced of this sentimentally. We have to be convinced of this based on knowledge of Krishna's greatness, of Krishna's wonderfulness. And this is why the Bhagavatam is describing how great is Krishna's creation. And this is what Brahma also discovers when he goes to Vaikuntha with his 4 heads. He discovers that his universe is just one tiny speck in the millions of universes. And there's millions of other Brahmas with so many other heads that arrive there. And in the same way, when we come out of our cocoon, we realize that how big is Krishna's universe. So I'll stop here and see if there's any discussion, any comments, questions.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances.
Please accept
All
my
glories to Srila Prabhupada. Very wonderful, Prabhu, to hear on this New Year's Day from you. Even the universe is as insignificant as a small atom. And the name of Krishna is all important, all powerful. You have convinced very nicely. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you for your, we are so fortunate to be put in your association. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
We're fortunate to have yours, Mataji. Happy New Year to you as well.
Yeah, Hare
Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Please accept my obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. All glories to Srimad Bhagavatam. Wow. It's just so joyful and so enlivening to the heart. I'm just thinking of, as you're describing this insignificance, it's unbelievable. And how you have made this verse relevant to this morning and New Year. It's so amazing, Prabhu, so beautiful. I'm very, very thankful to you for that. And, I was thinking, as we reflect on this insignificance or very tininess, but at the same time, this verse from Maharaja's class on Malayasya Vachandanam, the Yatopaswan Vavaye, I was thinking, what's the chance that, Krishna or the spiritual master or the devotees pick insignificant, tiny, and whatever, adjectives we can add and still make us of some use, still give us some opportunity to serve and actually make us feel that we are worthy. I was like, I was thinking of that Ahobakiyam verse. And we can't find any other reason other than that causeless mercy. That, as Shyam Prabhu was saying about this 2023, this temple and Radha Shyam Sundar appearance there, it's unimaginable. We couldn't have imagined that it would happen. But for each of us to play such significant role, and, our youth Kirtans, Nandu was sharing like how people from India and all over are actually watching ISKCON Nepal YouTube and the Kirtans. I'm like, for the book distribution, ISKCON Nepal is like one of the top in Vaishashi Prabhu's list. I'm like, what's the chance? Devotees are very wonderful and doing such a wonderful, very sincere, dedicated service. But so much going to that, Yadopriya Swanvavayi. Somehow Krishna wants to bring that glory to the devotees. And so he's actually giving us that opportunity. And, devotees and spiritual master are engaging us in these ways. I was like, wow, what a fortune, what a glory, what a position we are in. So just, so much of those feelings of gratitude travel through your class. And I was also personally feeling very grateful to you. I know all these are your meditations and reflections for the new year to take up this process and become even more committed and more sincere in the 365 days that we have in this new year. And how fortunate we are to be able to hear such deep reflections and such sincere, prayers and requests to inspire all of us also to cultivate such, sincere steps in our devotional service. So much gratitude. 366 days in a leap year. Thank you, Hanumantaji. We have one bonus here today to become even more closer to Guru, Krishna, and the devotees. Jai, Jai. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Very nice reflections. Very wonderful. And we are whatever we are because of the association of devotees. If we were alone, we wouldn't be able to do anything. And I remember one class, Aindir Prabhu had mentioned that how Krishna actually misses us more than we miss Krishna. That's how dear we are to Krishna. So that's the amazing thing. That's the inconceivable aspect of Krishna, that he has so many souls and he has unlimited creation, but at the same time, he's 100% involved with every soul, right? So like when parents have too many children, then their love gets distributed with many children, and so each one gets a little less. But when Krishna has billions of children, trillions of children, trillions of universes, he can still be 100% there for every soul. And that's actually, I mean, not just a sentiment, but that's actually the whole message of Krishna's Rasa Leela, right? That he dances with every gopi. Swayam Bhagavan Krishna fully there with every gopi, showing us that he's there for every soul. And I was thinking that how every soul, every person in this world is a pure devotee, is a Srila Prabhupada or a Maharaj or a cowherd boy. Every soul in this world is Srila Prabhupada came from the spiritual world as an eternal Satyavish avatar, eternally liberated soul to help us in this material world. And all these are great acharyas and great saints. They're all Nitya Siddhas, eternally liberated souls coming here. And that's the position of every soul, right? That's the position of every soul, that we are. Prabhupada says Siddha means Siddha, Sadhana Siddha or Nitya Siddha. Siddha means Siddha, that every soul, of course, different souls are empowered more or less by Krishna, but every soul has that position in the spiritual world. So, so every soul is so dear to Krishna, and every soul has that capacity. And this is why these devotees, right, they relate so deeply and affectionately with every soul, because they see that, well, this soul is like, so dear to Krishna, and they are like we have so much affection, love for our spiritual masters, our saints, our these, that every one of them is meant to be someone like that. And so we, with that knowledge, right, with that understanding, we can relate with every soul in that way. Our 100%, we're trying to give them, not materially but spiritually, right? And therefore, like we see that in the devotees, like they are so closely, they give their heart and soul, to they're 100% there for when they preach. This is how they are so effective, because they have that vision, that though we're insignificant, every person is so insignificant, but we know the pure devotees are not insignificant, right? But the point is that every soul is a pure devotee. They've forgotten it right now, but every soul is a pure devotee. So how dear they're to Krishna. Like like how dear is Srila Prabhupada to Krishna, right? And how can we think of neglecting him or thinking, or not um, being, not being so, aware, like wanting to be close to him. Well, every soul is like that, and that's the importance of the living entities, individual souls. Thank you very much. Other comments, questions?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. This is
Hare
Sadiq.
Krishna. Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Anand Pranam.
Happy New Year, everyone. So
Happy
wonderful.
New
You know, I cannot think anything philosophically, but very contemporary and even simple laddu examples. That's what comes to my brain. So when you're
Year.
thinking about the mercy, I was thinking about my experience and many of our experience. Many of us has background from India, and we all have traveled in Indian railways.
Mm,
Most of the times, we don't have a confirmed ticket.
mm.
Okay.
Yes.
Somehow get a RAC, reservation after cancellation, or unconfirmed ticket.
Mm.
And I had attempted many times going into reservation compartment and looking for the TTR who comes in the black coat.
Ah,
He knows he's like a spiritual master, a representative of Krishna. He
mm,
knows that I don't have a confirmed ticket. He'll
mm,
make me wait on the exit or near the bathroom for some
mm.
left time, some station. Will go on. And after that, he will somehow call and give a confirmed ticket.
Ah,
It's the mercy of a spiritual master. I can think like they can scan in and out of the people, and the waiting and the price what we pay is the faith.
mm,
So I mean that's very wonderful thing, Prabhu. Like it's
mm,
only the faith that we still need to. Yeah, we are waiting. We don't have a confirmed ticket, lower berth, upper berth, but sure we'll get a berth. I know I was able to connect when you're saying about the association and thing. Uh,
mm, mm.
and
Yes.
also my experience, like after coming to Krishna consciousness, I ventured one master's degree in the US. My
Mm.
first class in cognitive psychology
Wow.
was
Wow.
we all should develop a speculation. I said, yo, this is too bad. What Srila Prabhupada is saying and what this professor is saying is absolutely different. The first class in the US is about learn the art of developing speculation.
Uh-huh.
And, and that was very hilarious. And I mean, the science and all those things are good, but the appreciation of nature fact was very touching. That is the missing piece that this world is a rat race, right? People
Mhm.
try to even enforce us to um, compete with the nature. They don't
Mhm.
appreciate, but like coming from design background, Prabhu, like we always have the challenging. Where do you take design inspiration? They're common interview questions, right? So I take design inspiration from banana because no one
Mm.
can create banana, but there are so many design factors. Banana is green, it changed to yellow, which gives visual cue and a lot of things. That's a thing that we all should appreciate the nature and the creator behind that.
Mm.
Uh, that's where the scientists and whoever persons they're showing the path. It's a blessing to have your association, Prabhu. Thank you very much.
Mm. Thank you, Prabhu. It's so amazing, like what you were saying just now. You're saying with such deep realization. You can actually feel it in your words, and it's that it's that realization that Krishna, the spiritual master, being the representative Krishna, that you know uh, they 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 are our refuge, and they can give us that ticket back home, back to Godhead. That very quick ticket, that very though we're not qualified, though we're not deserving, but giving us that ticket. And in the association of devotees, right? In the association of devotees, we can get that ticket. That association gives us everything. Um, and you mentioned another very good point, about um, uh, it's um, that none of us have a confirmed ticket. It becomes confirmed only by their mercy. So that's such a nice way to put it, actually. That's the key thing. And um, and we're praying that we can have that realization and develop that this year. Yes. Any other final comment? We have like 3 minutes left. Today is a holiday, so we're doing an
Hare
hour.
Krishna Prabhu,
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
nice class. So I was thinking this morning what I should, what should I practice or what should I do for this year? I mean, I was thinking being grateful for small things that I get it, small and big things in life. So from this class, from your class and from various devotees' comments, I was thinking, of course, the universe itself is so small, right? So then what is my position? So we are so insignificant, but still we are getting so many things or so much mercy from the various people and various devotees in our life, right? So being grateful for those activities, though we are so insignificant, right? So I appreciate and I wanted to practice that, Prabhu, this year. So I was just thinking, taking that inspiration from you, especially, the way how you make everybody feel very important. It's that they're important, but yeah, you make them feel very important as well, right? So it's so nice quality that you have. So I wanted to imbibe some part of it at least. So thank you so much, Prabhu, for being with us in April community and inspiring all of us in various services. So we wanted to thank you, Prabhu.
No, Prabhu, I'm really grateful for your inspiration always. And this gratitude to what you were saying is so important. Like one person, he was coming and he was chanting and practicing, and then all of a sudden he sort of disappeared, and and it was because he forgot, how special this opportunity is, what we have. And then we forget for a long time, and then when we miss it, then we come back. So that's the thing, that like we forget what's the how special this opportunity is, how grateful we need to be for this. And um before this, I was in Evansville, Indiana, and we didn't have any association there. And before that, I was in Florida Gulf Coast University, which was in Fort Myers, Florida, Southwest Florida. Alachua was 4 hours away. Miami was 2 hours away. We didn't have any association there. And then all of a sudden, this opportunity came, and it came here, and we have such amazing association. So that association, I realized, was the gift of Krishna, right? Because I could have very well not received a job here. I could have very well been, like most situations, I would have stayed in Evansville, and there's few devotees there. But that association is Krishna's gift to us. And that verse in the Tulsi Puja, we say that, please give me the privilege of devotional service. That it's actually such a privilege to have the association of devotees and the opportunity for devotional service. It's such a privilege. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Please
Prabhuji,
accept obeisances, Prabhu.
such a wonderful class, and the discussions afterwards was also so wonderful. In the beginning, you spoke about some of, particularly Newton and other things. It's amazing how, we are also insignificant, and, but Krishna actually wraps us up in this huge cocoon, trillions and trillions of miles deep, and we are embedded in there. Many of us are embedded in there. When we talk about science, science talks about singularity, science talks about weak forces and strong forces, attraction between massive objects and all those things, but it never talks about this insignificant things, and that is where bhakti comes in and it teaches us. I was actually reading an article the other day, and the funny thing is we all know about the five elements. Fire is one important one, water is the other one. But the fact is, fire, as we know, is very, very rare in the universe. It's there only in a few places. Because fire to be in its form is, it needs oxygen, it needs carbon, and it needs hydrogen in proper proportions. And without fire as we know it, life is really difficult. So without the flame that we see, thermal heat, other things exist, but this is so rare. And that's why, I would always wonder, why is it these five elements are stressed? Of course, they are the basic ones, but Krishna's mercy that the most insignificant is also taken care of, so that we can practice. So thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhu. Yes. Every element is so significant. This is why we can live on this planet. Otherwise, like you're saying, if there's no fire, this world would freeze, and we'd all be like icicles rather than humans. And in the sun planet, there's too much fire. So Krishna's given us the right balance here, so that we have these forms that are adapted to our, to these elements that are here. Like these forms are suitable for this environment. And that knowledge is there, and Bhagavatam tells us, puts it in context that, well, this is Krishna's creation. This is how great this creation is. Yeah, bro, thank you for that. It's very amazing, Krishna's creation, and Krishna's power. Yes. Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you, everyone. We'll stop here. It's a good time to end, and Happy New Year to everyone. Hare Krishna to everyone. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Happy New Year. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Happy New Year.